Hey, all you beautiful, beautiful people. We are Plenty. We are just four random individuals who are doing a podcast because, why not, right? A quick disclaimer before we begin. We're just four random individuals who are in no way experts in what we're talking about. We're just very opinionated and we just want to share our thoughts, right? To give like a quick introduction, I am Malinka. I'm 25. I live in Sri Lanka. The reason why I'm specifying where I live is because two of our friends here are not living in Sri Lanka at the moment. Yeah.
Right. My name is Nimesh. I'm 24, turning 25 real soon. I'm currently in Tokyo, Japan.
Hi guys, Hibi, I'm 25 and I live in Australia.
Okay, so I'm Vinura, I'm 25, I'm living in Sri Lanka as well. I think the pandemic and all these lockdowns have forced us to stay at home. So we've actually reconnected quite a bit during this time. And we thought, hey, why not jump on the bandwagon? Everyone's trying
Fortunately or
this out,
unfortunately.
right? Yeah, for you
Yeah,
and for us.
actually, like a
Not for
couple of
us,
days
for you
ago,
guys.
a couple of days ago, I actually saw a meme. It said, "What do you call four people who are seated together?" A podcast.
Oh, classic.
So, what's the tea today, boys?
I think we'll talk about something a little controversial. I think something we've all resorted to these days also now that we're stuck at home. I think dating and relationships in the digital
Ooh,
age, now
big
that we
oof.
are also coerced into it. What do you think, boys?
Right. Yeah. So, like you said, I think something that we've resorted to simply because of the whole pandemic and what it's forced us to do. Because we've had plenty of opportunities to interact with people at work, when we go to lectures at uni and whatnot. But right now, since most of us are still in lockdown and whatnot, we've been forced to go on to dating apps. We've been forced to go on to social groups. And one thing I've mainly noticed, when using these myself, is that there is a higher number of men than the number of women.
Given
And
this
Yeah.
saturation, I personally think, and I think, speak on behalf of everyone, this is a little bit of an obstacle. Now, male perspective, how do you succeed given that we've identified this kind of saturation on this
okay,
side?
so let's establish this, right? When you get onto a dating app, you put a profile picture. That's the first thing a person sees.
Yeah. So, like when you go on the app itself, you see the picture, and then you can either swipe right or swipe left or whatever. And then when you scroll down or up, then only you will see like the description or whatever. So like looks play a huge role in
100%.
on like online dating apps and all that stuff.
100%. Yeah, and I'm glad we've said that out loud because that's the fact of the matter. And but having said that, I do understand that all of us, not all of us, are 6 foot tall, except
Is he though?
Malinka.
I am okay.
Much
you're,
lies.
you're not
I am.
six.
I
You're
am.
not 6 foot tall,
I
Hivi.
am.
You're
You all
not.
haven't seen me
Okay,
around
I'm not
time.
6 foot tall, but
Yeah, we
And
know.
not
We
not
can
all
see
of
that.
us have chiseled jawlines or with no or packs.
get in
I
there.
mean, I wonder why you have a beard, Hivi, covering the jawline. Anyway,
What?
anyway. So having said that, it's not. It doesn't come down to your six pack or how tall you are or whatever. It comes down. I think it comes from grooming yourself. Having good hygiene. I think that makes you more presentable, which
Yeah.
inadvertently makes you more approachable.
Yeah, just to add to that, hygiene plus how you dress
Oh,
is a
100%, mate.
complete game changer. Like an average looking person can go from like go
Yeah.
from average looking to extremely good looking just because of the stuff that you wear, right?
Also, don't
So it's
forget about the smell.
100%.
important.
You need to smell good.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
can't
you
smell
can't smell
people
through the
on
phone,
dating.
Hivi.
But you
Jesus
need to
Yeah.
smell
Christ.
good if you actually really find person.
Just
But
at
yeah,
this
no.
at this stage we're just talking about like the interactions that you
Right.
get online, right? So it's
Yeah,
important, like you dress nicely, you take nice pictures, you
yeah,
pay a little attention to yourself because obviously
100%.
you need to work on yourself because you need to work on yourself before you put yourself out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you do get an opportunity to express yourself, not as much as one would like to, but through captions or the bio, you do get to express yourself a little bit. And that it's so important to be creative and not do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, a little bit of creativity goes a long way.
A long way. And so you present yourself as a complete package. You could show people how funny you could show people how you can cook them a nice meal. That goes a long way. That makes you. I mean, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
that's true, isn't it? Yeah.
100%, yeah, 100%. So more like like stemming on dating apps, I think another thing that I've seen online is like the number of dating apps, sorry, the number of dating groups which are popping up on Facebook, like different dating groups. They follow like a similar format to other like international level dating groups like Subtle Curry dating, South Asian dating, whatever. But it's more of like more of like the localized versions, and it's kind of funny because you see like small rivalries between like those dating apps also, which is quite interesting. A
Or
lot of
very
good
petty for that
things.
matter.
Yeah, not. Um, a lot of good things are actually happening on these dating groups. I see a lot of people getting together, a lot of interactions going on. I actually have a couple of my friends who've actually
Let's go.
gone together with other people, so that's really good, right? And it's like a good platform for like introverts and a bit of shy people to like just put themselves out there, see
Yeah.
what goes on, right? Because everyone at the end of the day needs interaction, needs human connection, right? Um, at the same time, there are certain trends that we have observed on these groups. The first one being like there are certain kinds of people who society would label them as simps. Just to put this out there, the term simps is not a negative term. It actually came about when
Monica, you mean a negative term? It is a negative term.
yeah, it is a negative
Yeah.
term, but the context of how it's been used these right now is not necessarily like a negative thing, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
at the beginning it was used as a term to describe a man who goes behind a woman who has expressed clear disinterest in them, who said no plenty and countless times, but they still go behind them like really being really desperate and stuff like that, right? So in that context, being a simp is a negative term, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening right now is the fact that even if you show like the slightest interest in a girl, even if you give her like one or two compliments, you're labeled as a simp. Other people
True.
would say,
I
"Are
think
you
there's like a
simping?"
big controversy surrounding the. Sorry,
I mean,
Yeah,
are you? Is
yeah,
mine because
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking something like I feel like
No,
it's
so
oscillating
so
slightly.
so it's
Okay.
basically we've created a
I
platform for different kinds of people to get on board and share themselves, express themselves, right? So it has to be a safe place. Is that what we're trying to get at, Vindra?
yeah. So
I
it's
think for sure, like I think there's also like see for me, I think there's a big controversy surrounding this term simp and how people now confuse it with like
Right.
people just being chivalrous. Like for example, even if you decided to go tell something nice or decided to be sweet or be polite or just spread some positivity out there, sometimes people might think you're being desperate, so they assume these
Yeah.
things for you. Now, I don't think that's very healthy because when a group of guys, even on these groups that we talk about, we see a lot of this happen. The moment they decide to be nice, there's a bunch of people rallying around them, calling them simps and all of that. That's disincentivizing them from actually trying to be nice and from trying to put themselves out there nicely. Now, I
So
understand that people will always judge you.
yeah.
So it's important to also reserve some self-respect for yourself. So use your common sense when you go about it. But calling them sims and rallying around it, I think is the onset of toxic traits in people
Yeah.
in itself.
So
It's my opinion.
basically, so when someone's being nice, they're a simp. That's what it's looking like. From how fragile is your ego to think that when someone's being nice
Oh,
and you're
big
like, oh,
words.
he's being nice, so he's obviously a simp, right? So that's
Yeah.
clearly there's like a bunch of people breathing heavily on the keyboard and typing simp, 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 and that's how it's looking like that, and that's clearly a toxic trait of people, especially with the men that's going about doing that, because from the
Yeah.
looks of it, it's the men who are doing it. So that's a clear sign of toxic masculinity, isn't it?
It
So
yeah,
is. It is.
because
talking about toxic masculinity, um, which is a form of traditional masculine ideology, obviously. So this includes people suppressing their emotions, masking distress. So it's basically okay to cry. That's what I wanted to say mainly. Just because you're a man doesn't mean you don't have to cry. Like,
yeah, it's important to show your emotions because right now the term toxic masculinity is all about you have to be a man, you have to be
so
strong, you
macho
have to
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
not show weakness, right?
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
but
Yeah.
being a real man is being in touch with your sensitive side, being
And
in
being
touch with
Yeah.
empathetic.
Yeah.
your
Definitely.
emotions.
Being
Yeah,
comfortable in your own skin
And
and
being empathetic. That's like,
yeah.
because we
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
understand how someone else is feeling. So imagine you calling someone else a simp, right? Imagine what they're going to feel like when you point them out and isolate them into feeling like a what do you call it, a rejected part of society. it's really bad for them.
Or like a desperate person, you're just
Yeah,
labeling
exactly.
them as such
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there in
Yeah.
front
yeah,
of
So
yeah,
they
people and
are
everything.
attacking their self-esteem itself, which is really
yeah,
bad.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So masculinity in itself, is it fair to say that masculinity in itself isn't toxic? It's men who aren't masculine, who aren't capable of understanding that masculinity means so much more. Is that
Yes.
what's
I,
toxic?
I think I've got like a good explanation for that. I don't know if you guys will agree. I think
Go for it.
masculinity, if we are to glorify it, would be calling people out on the right things.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Masculinity
Yes.
That's
isn't a
correct.
bunch
That's
of guys
100%.
correct.
getting together calling people things. I think
That's correct.
that's just toxic.
It's
Yeah,
when you can clearly see it when there is like misogynistic posts going around, which has been a trend that's coming up. This clearly shows that, and people rally around those posts. Some people, not all. I'm not telling all, but
yeah, yeah.
it's absolutely toxic, and it's just
True.
It
disrespectful.
is. It is.
And I
Yeah,
think
because
like
But
on that topic itself, I think in terms of like misogynism, you get like so many posts. I think we've all come across these, we've all talked about this, so many posts where guys, if they put themselves up for auctions and stuff on these groups, they'll tell like, oh, this is what I'm looking for in the girl. If you're not this, don't hit me up. Or like a meme
yeah,
that says feminists will scream out at like a dowry but will happily take half a man's property following a divorce, right? See,
yeah,
for me, the problem is how people try to pass these things off as jokes. I mean, in their perspective, I guess they're justified. But
yeah.
we need to now, as men, understand this one core thing. Terms such as misogynism, male chauvinism, sexism all exist because of how men have operated historically until like the
Agreed.
very present,
yeah,
Agreed.
yeah,
right?
100%.
It's our own actions that gave rise to terms like this. So many schools of feminism exist because men have always tried to tell women like what to do or like try to justify society for them or try to affirm gender roles for them.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I think in order to right these wrongs, we as men need to like put
Take
essentially put
accountability,
aside
one.
this supposed humor and dial it down a
Yeah.
bit, right? Because
yeah,
my
yeah.
problem is this: let's say you get these misogynistic posts, and then a bunch of guys will be like, even if we decided to call them out, we'll be like, hey bro, it's a joke, come on, it's a fun page, just take a joke, right? It's this kind of mentality that grows over the period of time,
Mhm.
which will eventually lead a
Yeah,
person to very simply, without even hesitating or like thinking about the consequences, just send an
exactly,
unsolicited
exactly.
blank pic, you know
Pick.
what it is. um,
Fill in the
um,
blank.
right, I think
can I
it's that.
can I
Yeah,
interrupt for a second?
yeah,
I think since we've, I mean, I'm gonna go back to the topic Sims. I'm sorry, but I think we've left out a very important part. We said that it's wrong to call out the person or call a person a sim simply because they're expressing themselves, expressing affection towards another person, right? But we do understand that we have to establish the fact that it goes beyond that. Sometimes people tend to take it a little too far. Sometimes,
Right.
right?
true.
Which
Yeah, so
means, sorry, Mani, continue.
yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's like when it comes to like the actual definition of a sim, after they clearly express this
Yeah,
interest in you, when they
yeah,
say no
yeah,
for the first time, just stop. Have some
yeah.
self-respect for you. Have just
Exactly,
have some,
exactly,
yeah, just stop. You need to have respect for yourself. You need
exactly.
to, yeah. So
With,
It
no
turns
means
into
no.
harassment at one point, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So
within the
no,
context of within the whole dating process, within having a conversation with another person, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that it's a two-way street at the end of the day, right? So if your feelings or if the amount of text you're sending, or to simply put it, if that's not being reciprocated,
Just
kind
stop.
of try to understand where you stand with that person, and in equal sense, like, don't try to do things that are detrimental to your own self-esteem, because at the end of the day, that's the most attractive trait that you portray to another
Yeah.
person.
yeah,
That's
100%,
true.
100%.
So,
Uh,
I
yeah,
think at the end of the day, like
continue. Sorry,
before we
Vinod.
I think move on to anything else, it's important to like understand, look like it's not nice to label people also, but also have some self-respect for yourself, know your boundaries. I think it all boils
Yeah,
down to common sense, right? But
That's true.
we also come across like a lot of other things, I think, which if you're talking about like dating in the digital age in itself has been prevalent or like it gets spoken about quite a bit. I think we've all would have experienced, or it's the whole been there done that scenario, ghosting,
Yeah.
right? I think it's
oh
very
mm,
sheesh.
common nowadays.
So yeah, ghosting is actually like really, ghosting is a really common thing that's happening. So ghosting is basically cutting off all contact with another
Yeah,
person. after like a couple of days, weeks, a month of talking, right? So there is actually no kind of set time period
There
of
isn't.
when
There
you
isn't. Yeah.
are supposed to ghost someone, right? So for an example, I used to talk to this girl like a couple of months ago, right in the middle of the pandemic, and we spoke to each other for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then we kind of like texted each other every day, and then we called each other sometimes. And what happened was she completely cut off all contact with me, and then I asked her like what's up and all this stuff, and she didn't
Yeah.
reply. I was like, okay, cool, understood. You don't want to do anything with me, perfect. I'll move on.
Yeah.
And then I just moved on with my life, right? At the same time, there's another incident where I was actually talking to this other person for about a week or so, and then there was no like proper conversation going on. It was like one
Right.
or two texts a day and all that. There was no spark. Nothing was happening, right?
Right.
And then the both of us, we just stopped texting each other, right? And that's not really considered as ghosting because nothing was going on, right? Ghosting
Yeah.
is when uh, the other person completely cuts off contact with you when you put effort into it, when you put like emotionally
But
invested
it has to be
in
both
whatever.
parties. It has to be both parties, right?
No, so ghosting happens when the other party is not as emotionally invested in you as you are, right? So that's why it's important to communicate that. You need to if
Right.
you need to
Right.
like set clear boundaries. You need to tell them like if you're not comfortable talking to someone, just tell them, hey,
Yeah.
I don't see this going anywhere. Let's just be friends. Let's just have like just talk like randomly out of nowhere, randomly,
Yeah. No.
or just like completely cut off. Just say I don't want to talk to you again. Just have that clear line of communication going on. Then it's easier for both parties to basically take the next step. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So what we're trying to say is basically, well, it's up to you at the end of the day. You're free to ghost. You're free to do whatever the hell you want with
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you want to do, right? But at the end, but let's try not to do it because we don't know how emotionally invested or how invested that person is into that conversation, into whatever you two have going on, right? We don't understand how
yeah,
the other party is feeling.
yeah,
So let's try to be a little bit more understanding about the other person, right? And that
yeah.
way, basically, let's try not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, in my situation, if
I,
the other person said, "Listen, Malinka, I'm not really interested in talking to you. I don't
Yeah.
see you as someone I would date in the future," I would have completely understood. I was like, I would have said, "Okay, thank you for telling me that. I
Yeah.
can like move on from that, right?"
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
completely like cutting off ties with me.
the fact of the matter is, look, it's inevitable. I think it happens from our end, it happens from their end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we as humans, I think, hate confrontation. But I think it's important to understand, very simply put, like, believe me, you'd rather be the jerk now and just be upfront as opposed to
Yeah.
be deemed or declared that like months
Yeah.
down the line. I think. But I also think like from ghosting in itself, right? Like, or when we're talking about ghosting in itself, I feel like it's interconnected to this one other thing that we always decide to, I think, secretly cherish. I don't know if you'd call it that. The
I
chase in pursuing someone. What do you both think?
Um, well, okay. Before we get to the chess, which is something we definitely need to talk about. I think how do you deal with when if you've been ghosted? How do you deal with it? Is something
Yeah,
that like
true.
to that I'd like to know because if it hasn't happened to you, it could very well happen to you in the future. Let's hope it doesn't happen to you. We sincerely hope that it doesn't, but
Wishful
Hopefully it doesn't
thinking.
it
happen,
does.
but
It does.
inevitably it happens to everyone. You do it to people, whatever. So if I personally feel like if it actually does happen to you,
Yeah.
just don't forget that you are worth it. Like don't seek
100%.
external validation. Like
Yeah.
it is hard. It is not as easy as it sounds, but the
Yeah.
more you work on yourself, it becomes easier to let things go. It's the fact
Yeah.
that you're holding on to the fact that you're giving power to them so that
Yeah.
when they ghost you, you literally feel a physical and a mental and a social pain that just brings your mood down and just destroys your mental health
Yeah.
in total.
We do
Um,
understand that we are just four random friends seated in front of a computer saying this. It's much easier said than done. We
exactly.
do
Yeah.
understand that, but we need to understand that closure or being able to move on. It comes from within. It comes from understanding your self worth. So
Yeah,
that's the first step to
100%.
whatever it is that you do. Whether you're going into a new job or whether you're going into try to start dating a person, it comes down to understanding your self worth.
Yourself. That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
And moving on, the chase, as Vinura started off talking about, we do enjoy a good chase, don't we? We do enjoy trying to get things that we on paper cannot, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and
So
and it
No,
Okay.
yeah, okay. So with the chase, it's pretty evolutionary when it comes to if you look at it in one side of it,
Okay.
because you love
All right,
to
Darwin.
because as a what do you call it, back in the day, like back in the day, when we were like wearing what do you call it, animal
Leaves,
skins and
Nothing,
stuff.
nothing,
leaves, and
nothing.
animal
We were
skin.
They
wearing
would,
nothing
yeah,
basically.
with nothing. Where men and women would go out and hunt something down, chase it and hunt it down, and be satisfied with what they get. And then they'd be satisfied with it for a while, and they'd start again to chase something else. So
Yeah,
it's more like when you get that first thing, you just the spark just dies off. That's what happens, right?
yeah.
When you initially actually
You
caught
feel
the
satisfied.
yes, you become satisfied, and uh,
And one
so
other thing I'd like to point out is when you do chase somebody and when you finally get that person, be it a text, be it an actual relationship, um, you end up thinking you can do better. That's something because we're never satisfied, are we? We as humans, we in genetically, what is it? You call it biologically,
Yeah.
or we're never satisfied. We think we can always do a little bit better, and that's why most of relationships or most of these friendships that they die off. But one thing that
Yeah.
is important in understanding that understanding is that the reason why you chased that person, the reason why you went behind that person, that the reason why you fought for that person. Once you do realize that and you keep fighting for that feeling, everything will come back to being normal.
yeah, don't forget where it initially originated, where your feelings
Exactly,
actually
Yeah.
exactly.
originated from.
Go on,
just
Malik.
just look back and look into what you found attractive in another person,
Exactly.
and then just go behind it, because obviously there's always another, the next best thing, right? Because we're
Yeah.
always moving to the next best thing, we're always looking for the next best thing, right? But what the reality is that the next best thing might not happen to you, because
Yeah,
for the other person you might not be the next best thing, right?
Oh
I mean, to
man.
put it bluntly, that's
ouch.
that, right?
Oh man.
So just look back, look internally,
Yeah.
just reflect on what actually made the other person attractive to you, and then just kind of like go behind that. Because obviously, if you can do that, you can make it work.
Yeah. But let's not badger people. Let's go on about it the right
Yeah,
way.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. That doesn't mean like being like a traditional simp,
Yeah.
but yeah,
You know,
that's
yeah.
noted.
that's
Note, I
like
said traditional, traditional.
Traditional. Yeah.
Yes.
I also feel like in terms of, like amidst all of this, when trying to, even when you're embarking on this chase or when you're pursuing someone, I feel like people try to create this persona that's very, not yourself. I feel like they try to come up with this whole personality, or try to portray themselves as something that's not long lasting, that's very unsustainable. I feel like that's a big reason as to why people say, oh, this person was very nice in the first 2 months and then everything just started to change. I feel like people just go
Yeah.
overboard and like go
Yeah.
beyond what they are trying to like get something, and they just can't live up to it. And I think that's a big problem with like dating or like relationships in general when it comes to like what people try to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, it's so much easier to say you're like 6'5" or like you have six
When you're
packs or
not.
whatever when you're not, because the other person can't see you, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
you're just putting it on an app or like a group or whatever. It's just like a line, right? So it's important to be authentic and be true to yourself, because obviously, if you create like an unsustainable image of yourself, you can't maintain it for long. Like for an example, I had an incident where I went on a date with a girl, and then at the end of the date, I told her, "Listen, I had a nice time and all that." And then the next day, she tagged me on a meme saying, "You like me? You didn't like me. You like the personality I created for you," which is really messed up.
That's messed
Brutal,
up,
It's
man.
really
right?
messed up, right?
Brutal, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are actually two different things. That being a facade, as well as, I mean, I don't know the end goal of her to actually
Yeah.
tell me that
Wonder what the
she
actual
just
reason
created.
behind. I mean,
Yeah,
wonder
I
what
actually,
the psychological reasoning
I
behind that it
I
was.
have no clue. I have no clue. So I mean, so basically, at the end of the day, just be authentic, just be true to yourself,
Yeah.
right? And like, don't be a bad person,
Yeah, be
because
nice.
Yeah.
you just don't be a bad person. Don't hurt other people's feelings if you can help it, right?
Malika,
Yeah.
can I ask a small question from the three of you? I'm going off script, and if y'all think we don't have a script, I mean, come on. Yeah, so I'm going off script. I'm going off script. So is there a reason why people feel a necessity? to pull up a facade or to say false facts about themselves.
For
Because
me, I think personally, sorry if I can, like, I
No,
Go
don't
go
ahead,
want
for
to
it.
please.
Go
no,
for
Yeah,
no,
it.
go ahead,
please
Varun,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
please.
Varun, yeah.
Okay, I personally think it's also to do with like your own confidence, the self-worth you attribute to yourself. For example, you might feel like you're not enough. You might feel like you're insecure. You might feel like you're trying to compete with people out there. And like what we also spoke about very at the very beginning, you have to be your best version. And I think people decide like think take it up to themselves, take it upon themselves to be
Yeah.
something that they are not in order to be
Yeah.
the best version of themselves. And at the
Yes.
end of the day, 2 months down the line, you crumble.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it
that's
that
an
could be one of the reasons, I think.
that's an excellent point. You took the words right out of my mouth. Be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, like, and also lying is
Don't be
so
like a
taxing, man. I don't know why people lie. Like,
Give me, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know why people lie, because lying is so taxing, because you need to keep up with that lie, right? So it adds up. Like, one, like
Exhausting.
you lie once, and then that's A, let's say, and then you lie twice, that's B, and then C, and then you got the whole alphabet up your back, man. That's just bad.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
took a turn.
Yeah,
so it,
so I think it's
yeah.
time to conclude this episode, is it? With
Is it?
I think we've given our collective 8 cents of the online
Yeah.
dating and all that stuff. Yeah. So
Smart.
any
I just
smart
clocked it.
math,
Quick maths.
quick
quick
maths.
math, quick math. So any concluding thoughts, boys?
I think for me, I would say, look, I know as much as we say, for me, I think what I want to really stress on is the this whole culture that like guys try to take upon themselves. I think this whole toxic traits and all of that. The one thing I really want to leave this podcast with is we as men, even if at some point of time wanted to call out women on double standards, we can't do it because we are the ones who created it in the first place. So until we stay quiet and we are able to, have an equal playing field for everyone, or
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
in sexism, misogynism, these
Yeah.
convoluted ideas of male chauvinism, I think we need to keep our gap shut for a bit and
Yeah.
just, realize where we went wrong. I
Adding to
think
that,
we need to do some self
yeah,
reflection.
adding to what Vinura is saying, so my conclusion would be either you are with me or against me in creating a safer environment for women and women empowerment and creating equality. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. 100%. And I mean, I'm going off topic here, but what I'd like to say is that for men and women out there in equal sense, I think we all need to understand. Like I've said this a couple of times during the podcast, but we all need to understand our self value or worth, and we need to be ambitious. I think we need to pay attention to ourselves, take time to ourselves to build up our character, personality, and because at the end of the day, what you find attractive about yourself is what you need someone else to find attractive about you,
Yeah.
right? So let's focus on ourselves. If it even if it's work, don't be available all the time. Just focus on your work, focus on what develops you at the end of the day, right? I think
Yeah.
that's what I'd like to
And
say
if I could add a little bit to that,
go for it.
sorry, I'm also just completely derailing. I think
Go for it.
because we are talking about the digital age, I think since we also strayed off a bit here and there,
Yeah.
I think since our topic at hand is about the digital age itself, you will get
Mhm.
ghosted, you will look at people who you want
Yeah.
to chase, pursue, but it's very critical, like Marsh said. I think Malinka, we everyone said that you really do not attribute your self worth on or like attribute your self-worth to how someone responds to you
Yeah.
or reacts to you or
Yeah.
values you or looks at you, and you need to
Yeah.
really have that confidence to be a
Yeah.
better person for your own self at the end of the
No
day.
need of
Yeah, so
external
that comes
validation.
from
Yeah.
within. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Avi.
Yeah.
That comes from within.
Yeah. I have a few concluding thoughts as well. So the first thing is that be authentic, be true to yourself,
Yeah.
and do what makes you happy, right?
That's
Because
it.
your happiness or your personal happiness is like the most important thing, right?
100%.
So be happy, be authentic, and just be a nice person, dude. That's
Don't
all.
be a
That's
jerk.
all
Is it
anyone
is it
expects of you,
is
right?
it fair for me to assume that the four of us are quite happy right now?
Ah,
That's a topic for that's a topic for
Debatable.
another
That's a
episode.
topic for a different day.
That's topic for another
Yeah.
episode, right? And another thing is call out people you see online who are
Yeah.
not doing like the bare minimum to be like a nice person, right?
Yeah.
More than calling out other people, it's more important to call out your friends.
yeah.
I think Dumbledore in Harry Potter 1 put it, how about a one or two? I think it's one. Put it in the nicest way. It's easier to stand up to your enemies, but it's difficult to stand up to your friends. So if you
Yeah.
see your friends doing something bad,
Damn,
just
son.
call them out, right?
If you are
Yeah.
being
And
silent, that means you are against us. So
if you're being silent, that means you're part of the problem.
you are
Being
So
silent,
Yeah,
normalize
you're
it.
part
definitely
of
a
the problem. We're not a
rebel.
cult.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I think that
No, wait,
concludes.
wait. Before
Sorry,
before we
sorry,
end, before
sorry.
we end,
Yeah,
if you at any point see us, see the
yeah,
four
of
of us
course, call us
contradicting
out.
ourselves,
yeah, yeah,
call us
yeah,
out, man. Call us out.
Call us
yeah.
Call
out.
us out. Give us
Definitely.
We are
shit.
human. We
Give
Yeah,
us
make
shit.
mistakes, obviously.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, exactly. We're human. We make mistakes. We're not perfect, right? So
yeah,
call us
yeah,
out because at the end of the day, we are all trying to like improve on ourselves. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
correct.
Okay, I think that concludes the podcast. Thank you so much for watching slash listening.
Listening.
So if you have any feedback
We need
or thoughts,
therapy. Who said
if
that?
you have any feedback or thoughts, just let us know. We'll try to improve further. And that's it from us. We are Plain Tea. Peace.
Peace.
All right.
Catch up.
Outro music.